Hi guys and welcome to the Quinn podcast. Here we give you a look through the eyes of the most successful athletes, entertainers, entrepreneurs and influencers on this planet. Be sure to check out all of the content at quinnpodcast.com. Enjoy the episode. Back in college, industrial design. What was sort of the career view back then? I'm sure you didn't decide right away you wanted to be CEO of like a couple
No.
companies, or was that a thing back
Um,
then?
yeah. So look, I was always into design. My father was an architect, and uh, I finished. I think probably from as soon as I could draw, I was, I wanted to be an architect. Um, However, he sort of talked me out of that because the industry was in decline, and pointed me in the direction of product. Um, And I think whether you're a sports person or you're involved in politics or you're involved in something, if you feel passionate about it, and then
Sure.
you start pursuing things. So I started looking into this is early days. This was before CAD. It was before. So we're talking 35, 40 years ago, maybe longer, 50. No, yeah, a long time. But there was, there weren't 3D printing, there wasn't any of this technology, and it was all about sketching and drawing. And I was lucky enough to be able to draw well. So
hmm
that's where the passion started. I just kept drawing and started following my career. But early on, I was never very good at school, and so what I ended up doing was um, I sort of skipped university, the first part of it, and tried to get a job in a design studio. And then I went overseas and started working in London, came back and finished my degree, managed to only do, they gave me credits on a lot of it, went back overseas and worked overseas for 3 or 4 years. So it was a checkered career as far as my education, but experience counted for a lot, and passion, I think, probably.
hmm
So that's how I started. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Can you remember like a specific moment where you were like, okay, like design, like this is it for me, or was it just your dad did it? It was sort of the logical step for you?
Um, no, there wasn't. It was just a lot of small steps, as
hmm
in small things that made me. I do remember going to a particular film about industrial designers about the profession, with a school friend, and we both then turned to each other and went, "That's what we're going to do." Uh,
hmm
but it wasn't. Back then, industrial design was not a career that people pursued. It was quite unique. I think there weren't a lot of there was one university in Melbourne that dealt with it, 30 students. Um, People didn't, they thought that if you did industrial design, you might design machinery,
Right.
not products. And so the idea of actually dealing with products and furniture and things like that was, even when I started looking at it, I don't think um, I realized that someone was responsible for designing everything that was made. And so when you
hmm
start taking that apart, you realize there's got to be a lot of people who are doing it. And back then it was, a lot of engineers were doing product design because there weren't really a lot of product designers. So
hmm
now there's people specialize in all sorts of aspects about product design, but it was a little bit more left field. It wasn't so mainstream back then.
Got you there. Yeah, for sure. So why not then just take a job in like industrial design? Why create like three, four, whatever amount of companies you
Companies.
created throughout time?
Look, I'm not very good at being. In fact, what I realized early on was that I was nearly unemployable. Um, so that meant that I wasn't good at taking instructions from people, and I had a desire to try and create my own products. So the first company I did, I basically came out of uni and got my old man, my father, to come out of retirement, and asked him to show me how to run a company. Um,
hmm
and so he mentored me initially, and that was we had a good sort of 5 or 6 years working together on small projects, and doing, let's say, trying to range all of the different skills in design. So he would do the architecture, I might do design some of the furniture and the ashtrays and the interiors and things. And so we worked together on projects. Um, then from that point, I decided that I wanted to to try and get more clients and customers, and so I started consulting. And so we worked. I basically managed to get enough jobs to get an employee or someone to help me, another industrial designer, and it just grew slowly. So we started with a company that I came up with a name and started working as consulting to other industrial designers, companies, and that was called Catalyst. And by the time I got back to Australia, we had probably 16 designers at one stage. We had about 24 people, and lots of clients around the world. So it in the first sort of 5 years, what I realized is that all of the customers we needed were in Southeast Asia, and we were close to Southeast Asia. And a lot of the manufacturing was happening in China and Southeast Asia. So it was just a logical step, really, to try, and if we were going over to see factories and understand how things were made, we would talk to some of the big companies that were based in Singapore and Hong Kong, and they would then give us that. Like, that was the start of Motorola's Asian part of their company. So we would we'd try and find them as a customer and go back and talk to them 4 or 5 times, and finally they'd give you a job. And then we would work with HP Printing, and they would finally give us a job. So we ended up with some good customers that meant that we had to continue to travel back and forth to Southeast Asia, and the company grew. So it grew to a point where I realized that I didn't really like customers very much, as in design customers, because they would always, if you came up with 2 or 3 different design ideas, they would always choose the safe one. And that would mean that some of the best ideas and the best designs that you might come up with weren't really pursued. So that's when we started thinking, well, what about if we actually make some of these products for ourselves? What about if we, do some startup ideas and come up with that sort of idea? So that was where the next sort of company idea came from. We had 2 or 3 of those. Probably most of them didn't work, and either were not commercially viable, or were too hard to, were too ambitious. And then that was around about the time there was the .com back in the 2000s, 20 years ago, when the .com crash happened. But we had set up a company and got venture capital on board, and so spent a couple of years doing that until the .com crash came tumbling down. And then finally, we had to try and find a way to pay back all of the debt we had because of that particular issue. And so that was the start of the most recent, or the company we've been in for 25 years, and that's Knog. So that was really born from the need to, I realized then that there's no way anyone was going to employ me. So I had to start again. And so that was when we started doing Knog, and it was fun. It was a fun project, and that turned into a company which was far more profitable than the design company. And we could drive the business and drive the ideas and come up with different things that we enjoy doing.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, that sounds fun. What was like starting out building your company, right? What was sort of the ratio between, okay, I got my knowledge on industrial design or design in general, and then like all the like client management skills, this and that, like things that surprised you early on that you were like, this is way more important than I thought it was going to be, or like?
Oh, look, the two, so Catalyst, the design company that we had for sort of 13 years, I was lucky enough to be able to talk to my father and go, what do you think? He had a lot of advice and experience dealing with clients and customers. Knog, on the other hand, didn't really have, this was more of a sales company. And I realized very early on, if you want to develop a brand and products in a brand, design is one of the skills you need. And design probably makes up 15 or 20% of the total business. And the rest of it is customer service, is packaging, is logistics, is finance, is sales, is market knowledge and logistics and production. And so when we started Knog, we had I think we had a company would have had 10 designers in Knog, but we had no logistics and no production person and no marketing team. Um,
Hmm.
and so, because it had been a design company, and so we moved into that without realizing that, in fact, to make this company work, we needed to change the balance of who was working. Sorry, I've got lots of things going on.
I hear it.
Yeah. So we had to change the balance. So over the next few years, we basically moved from being a design-led company where it was mainly all designers producing all sorts of products, but we weren't marketing them properly, and we didn't have a sales team. So we
Hmm.
changed that process, and that was what I learned very early on, is that the design part of it was where my passion was, but it
Hmm.
wasn't enough to make a successful company. You had to have all these other disciplines and people who knew how to do the other things. So that
Hmm.
was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. Early days, like what were some of the like the because you have like these make or break moments, right? Especially in like startups. Do you remember like this is a moment where it either works or I'm somehow gonna have to get myself to be employable?
Um, yeah, you do. And I think, um, so the first part of Nog, as a company, um, we had this one idea, and it was really, the approach I think we took, in simple terms, was, there was a bike industry, okay, and the bike industry
Hmm.
was very much around either road bikes or mountain bikes. So 23 years ago when we started this, commuting wasn't really big in anywhere but maybe in Holland,
Hmm.
and parts of Europe and Germany. But for a lot of the other markets, it had been the poor cousin to the road bikes and stuff. So we thought, okay, maybe we can develop a brand around commuting and products which are basically fun rather than sports orientated. So,
Hmm.
my idea behind design was that products should be, um, if you buy a bike, you don't necessarily. There was a lot of cheap Chinese generic products that looked
Hmm.
terrible, were cheap and nasty, but you'd go and buy a beautiful bike. Or you'd have something you're really proud of that you loved, and you'd have to go and buy this really crappy, bike light to put on it. So
Right.
very early on, we decided, okay, let's focus on the aesthetic on the products, and focus on a whole look and appeal that's different from anything that's in the market. It needed to be unboring. It needed to be unique. Um, and I remember going to our first trade show, and having lots of interest about it, but not being able to secure a sale. Everyone was curious because we weren't from the bike industry, but no one was willing to put their money down. So it was leading up to that first order, was when we were sitting there going, Jesus, we've invested all this money in getting to trade fairs, going to see
Mm.
different customers, going to see people. Is it going to work? And then seeing this order come in on a fax machine for $50,000 and going, Jesus, it's actually someone's going to buy it. So I think at that point we went, hallelujah, we've got a business, we've got the opportunity to be able to actually make this work. Um, and then it worked very rapidly, and it didn't take very long, probably only 6 or 7 months, to get to a point where the turnover in in those first orders was greater than what we were making at the design company. So it was pretty easy to go, okay, this is where we need to focus our attention.
How do you explain that? It was just good product market fit, or was there like big part of luck involved, or you had like good understanding of that market?
No, had very little understanding of the market. Um,
Okay.
didn't do a lot of product research, as far as market research. Had a really and I believe that what makes a good product designer, is an inherent understanding as to what people need.
Mm.
They don't know it themselves. So if you take a product and product research to market and people go, I'm not quite sure, it's quite unique, it's quite different, I don't know if I like it or not. It might take, it's like when you try to get a kid to try a food they don't like. Sometimes they need to try it 2 or 3 times and they go, actually, this is really cool. I like it. Um, there are some products that are like that, and there are some, particularly if you're coming into the market without a lot of background, and you're trying something new, you have to just believe in yourself. And I think so. I knew that the products I designed for other companies had made them very wealthy. I just had an inherent understanding that if we tried hard enough, that we would that we'd get the backing. And from that first trade fair, I think we ended up with 16 markets who bought products, and we were selling products in all the major markets within that year.
Right. I read that somewhere where like if you keep trying, like someone's gonna buy eventually, even if it's on accident, like they'll buy. So
Yeah, look,
it's pretty. Yeah.
it's I think the idea in many ways is to pique someone's interest and to try and make sure that they see it and that they understand it. It's the same now with social media, and probably with you and your podcast. When people try it and they listen and they go, "Oh, that's good. I'm going to listen to it again," or it might be word of mouth. But if someone is to pick up a product, what I like about the things that I do, as in my profession, and is when you pick up a product and you feel it and you go, that's got a real quality to it, or there's something about it that makes sense, or that I like. It might be the feel, it might be the sound, it might be the look, and I often I use that as a guide as to whether I've been successful, because sometimes people just don't want to put the product down; they just want to hold it in their hand, and then you go, okay, they're hooked. So that's a nice, that's a nice aspect to some of the stuff that we do. You can get a very, very quick sense of whether you're successful or not when people look at it.
Right.
When we work in the studio with our team of designers and marketers and things, you don't often need to do more than make one or two of these prototypes and give them to everyone, and people very, very early on, you can sense whether it's going to be successful or not, because people go, yeah, oh my God, that I love it. I want one of them.
Right.
So that's it. It's not that difficult to determine what's going to be successful and what's going to be failure. And you just keep working on ideas until everyone in the team goes, yeah, that's great. I love it.
Mm-hmm. I hear that. Okay. So you get like a product that you're like, okay, this is going to work on that aspect. But for example, like the cycling like community, like you have a canyon bike, for example, like people are obsessed over that thing. That's like, if you get a canyon bike, I want a canyon bike. Those things are amazing. So you get one, and then you sort of, so you design something like in line with it. Like, how do you sort of first stage approach that? Like, this is going to be compatible with that. Like, how do you sort of determine that?
So you do need, for successful products now, we do a lot of research. So when we started, you were asking me back in the early days, we didn't have the research, didn't have the background, we didn't come from the cycling industry. So in fact, it was probably because the products we made were so different from anything else, which is why we were initially successful. Now, 23 years on, I think we have more to lose, because the business is bigger than it was, and there's a reputation. So we need to do a lot more research, and we need to understand a lot more about the consumers and the people who use the products. The products we make now are way more technical than they used to be. And also there's a lot more competitors out there. So we need to make sure that the products are suitable for exactly what we're designing them for. So something like a Canyon bike, to make sure that we work with Canyon at the moment. We're releasing some products and some collabs with them for lights that will be compatible with their bike. So we work closely with their engineering teams to make sure that their lights are compatible with specific bikes that they're looking for a product that's suitable. So we do work closely with these other brands to make sure that there's a compatibility, but also there is a lot more. There's a lot more that goes into the products these days than what there were before. We do a lot of testing, and we have teams of electronics engineers and firmware engineers and software, and so across all of the aspects of design. So it's not nearly as ad hoc now as it used to be when we started.
Yeah, no, I hear it for sure. What's the like the initial companies you had quite the VC funding, right?
Yeah.
What's sort of the difference between starting a company with like significant funding and like bootstrapping Knog? Or you had so take me through that, like the both initial
Uh,
stages?
they're both fun. So it is fun. It's fun to do a startup with venture capital. There's a lot more riding on it, and you have a lot more to lose. And
Hmm.
I think there's you have to answer a lot more questions. Um, there, I think in the end, doing it without external funding is far more fulfilling because everything is organic. So you
Right.
only have yourself. Um, you don't have to be as accountable to a venture capital company. So therefore, if you do make mistakes, you only have yourself to blame, and you're not
Mm.
losing someone else's money. Um, I we may after doing the VC startup, we made a decision that we were never going to get venture capital or investment again, because it was a very painful process and we lost a lot of money. Um, and we also we were we lost a level of control in that initial business that meant that um, making a decision to do everything organically ourselves
Hmm.
was ultimately the right decision. So now we have, there's no additional ownership. That we own, we have the full ownership and full control of Knog, which is good.
You would do it again though, like the whole thing, or well, you just said you wouldn't, but back in the days,
Look,
it's sort of the.
if someone was to ask me if I was them, would I do it? I'd say yeah, because often there's some really interesting ways of going about new
Hmm.
business. And Kickstarter, we tried doing Kickstarter with our Oibel. There's probably, I can't
Hmm.
think now, 10 years ago or something, and that was really successful. We raised over $1 million on Kickstarter, and it was a great way of marketing a new product, and also pre-selling a product that we didn't know if it was so different from a normal bicycle bell. We didn't know whether it would be successful or not. So the proof of the pudding, the proof in that product was the fact that we had I can't remember now how many backers, but there were a lot of $1 million worth of backers for a $20 bicycle belt. It's a lot of
Hmm.
backers, um, and so that was, there are lots of different ways you can start up something, and you can make a start, enter the market, and so for anyone who's sort of starting out, I think it's worth just try, throw mud at the wall, and if it sticks, that's great. If it, at least
Hmm.
you've tried, and I think that's where um, we've always just tried different things, and sometimes I could be accused of going into things, like a bull at a gate and not giving it enough thought. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
So
Well, wait, exactly like you say, like at least you tried, right?
I think that's the thing. Yeah, I think it's right. And, you definitely, each time you do it, you learn a little bit more.
Hmm.
I'm a big believer that you learn more from your mistakes than you do through successes, because you don't make the same mistake. If you make the same mistake twice, then, that's the definition of being stupid. Um, Sorry, I thought I had turned this off. It's still making, um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Busy times. Busy times.
busy times.
No, I get it, man. So then manufacturing. Okay, so you do the design
Yep.
part. How difficult is that? Is that like a significant part of what keeps you up at night, or no?
Um, we have people in China now who help us, like staff in China, for our company, and we've worked with some of the factories now for 15, 20 years. So the same people and the same company. So it doesn't keep me up at all, because I'm really confident that what they're doing now is every bit as good as anyone else around the world. So I have a
Hmm.
huge amount of confidence. But when we started working in China, you know, right back 30 years ago or such, it was a frontier town. A lot of the manufacturing, to get to the factories, you would be, riding on a dirt road, not quite on a donkey, but it was in a small taxi, and it was really that,
Right.
it was a very, very different reality. Now it's freeways everywhere, and it's the technology is robotic, and everything has changed. So, and the quality has improved.
Hmm.
The thing about production, I suppose, is making sure that, because there are a lot more people involved in bringing a product to market these days than what there used to be. When we started, it was my business partner, Malcolm, and myself who would do the design, go to the factories, negotiate with the factory that you hadn't met before, try to have them make it once and then fail and do it again. And then we'd be trying to sell the product to the distributors at a trade fair. And then we'd come back and we'd, send out an invoice to someone. So we were doing it all ourselves. Now we do have people who are really, well trained in all of the quality of the QA things and the logistics and making sure that everything works. So it's a little bit different from how it used to be, but it still can have issues and we can have delays. I think anyone manufacturing products, whether it's the bike industry or electronics or, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. I think that's true. So it's not easy, but it gets easier the more you do it.
Of course, right. How does it even work? Like you have a design and then sort of you send the blueprints over to like a manufacturer and they just sort of know what to do. Like how does that work?
So now it's much easier because obviously 3D printing is something that everyone has in their in their living room, so we work through a series of assessments for a new product, and we'll basically do an analysis as to what the opportunity is and is it worthwhile making? Is there a market out there? If it's something that's really radically different, and we've got to keep it a secret, then we'll get it to a point where we can show some key people within the market and under NDA, so it's all remain a secret, and then we'll work much more closely with the factories because it's new technology. So a lot of the times we're doing stuff like this, we're taking stuff to a factory or a producer, and they have never done it before, and so you have to convince them that in actual fact this is going to work, and you have to be confident in some way that it's worth for them investing enough money in the setup for the technology to make these things happen. That's a lot riskier than just doing a straight, another bike light or another product. So that's pretty much the approach we take it from then with 3D printing and with initial ideas. We prototype everything internally in-house in Melbourne, so that we can actually see things working, and we have our firmware and software designers come up with to make sure that in principle everything should work. And then we have a production team, and we hand that over to those guys in China, and they work with the tool makers and the production team. And it's a long process because there's a lot of testing, a lot of field testing, making sure that the quality is right. People are going from our office to China to check that that's all working properly. And then hopefully along that time frame, you then get a sample that you go, okay, that's perfect. We have guys doing the packaging and doing all of the website, the marketing, and the all the other campaign stuff at the same time, so that everything can arrive in market at the same time. And if that happens, then you're on a winner. Often the marketing will arrive but the product's still being tested, or there's something else that happened and there's a delay. But that's still hard. Still hard to get all those things lined up, at the right time.
No, it's just funny, right? When you sort of think about it, like I'm in law school, right? So it's totally unrelated, but so I have no like clue of how that world works. But just looking around in the world, like everything is thought about. Like someone has designed like every single thing you see. It's sort of I had this. I was in the car like a couple of days back. And I was like looking out the window. I'm like, sort of this out of body experience, right? When you're like every single thing like a man thought about.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And
it's pretty funny.
And to get it to that point where it's not just thought about, but it's made, tested, and reproduced, because making one is often quite easy, but making 100,000 and making them all exactly the same is a real. It's a skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes you feel pretty small when you think about it. Like every single just object in the world. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, man. Sort of now, right? Okay, so you have your niche carved out pretty well. What do you sort of like? How do you sort of decide? Okay, this is what we want to go do next. Is it like a lot of like market research, or is there like personal like inspiration involved? Like how does that come about? Like new product ideas.
Yeah. Look, it's really a lot of the time you have to be quite close to the market. You have to be talking with different people in different markets and different areas. So we sell in sort of nearly 50 countries, and we go and visit a lot of our markets. So we go and visit all these markets, and we talk about what their needs are. So that's a big part of it. But often the only way you're going to really come up with something new is when you try to identify where the opportunities are that don't exist. So when you've got a lot of competitors in a market, you've got to try and it's like playing chess. You think that they're going to move their rook to e5. In actual fact, you need to go and be a couple of moves ahead of them. So that's a really important part of strategy as far as trying to deal with product management and planning to make sure that you're ahead. But the best products that we have been involved in, the ones that I'm most proud of, are probably the ones that are really quite simple and elegant. And there was no understanding that there was a need there. It was just something that people said, you should like the bell, you should design a nice bell, or there's some technology that we've used that I can't talk about at the moment, but which is so obvious, but no one has applied this technology in this industry. So looking into another area and borrowing technology from a different industry or a different category of product, and bringing that in is an obvious way of being able to make significant improvements. Looking at materiality or materials that have never been used within a particular product area and saying, well, what about if we use that? The moment people are doing a lot of 3D printing for final products, like making saddles and seats with 3D printing technology, which wasn't available probably even 5 years ago. So that's a really big leapfrog and a big jump in our industry. So I think there's lots of things like that that spur really clever ideas, and you just have to be open to what possibilities there are. And then, of course, there is no guarantee that everyone else is going to think it's as good as you do. So then it's, there's a little bit of risk, a little bit of experience.
Yeah, for sure. Are there like things you tried that you're like, we can probably pull this off, and it turned out to be pretty impossible, like product ideas?
Yeah.
Or things you're like, want to still try?
Yeah.
Take me through one.
There's some plenty of ideas that we thought were going to be really successful and just didn't work. Then there's some product ideas that we had that were really great, but unfortunately we were unable to bring to market because either the factories or the prices were too expensive, or commercially people doesn't stack up. So people won't spend. And some of the most beautiful product ideas, you might look at a very expensive watch and go, well, why would someone pay $5,500 for a watch when you can buy a digital Seiko watch for $55? Well, there's going to be opportunities for someone somewhere, but it doesn't always work in the category of products that we sell in. And also, when you have a brand like Knog, there's an expectation that the products will sit at a certain price point, and that you won't, and their quality, but their value for money. So, we wouldn't be able to bring out a product which is $1,000 for a bicycle accessory because no one's going to buy it. So some of those ideas that you go, oh, wouldn't it be amazing? if we could do this, and then you go, actually, realistically, no one's going to buy that. So let's just move on to the next idea.
Wouldn't it be sort of exciting to have like a subsidiary that's like a sort of the I don't know, like Canyon does it. Like I don't know if their product is that good. I'm sure you're gonna say they are because you work with them. But they're expensive, right? Wouldn't it be sort of exciting to have like a expensive branch of Knog?
Oh, it would be. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and we have thought about doing collaborations with, the big French haute couture brands and things like that. That would be fun. So yeah, no, it would be great. But maybe that's going to happen in another lifetime. I'm not quite sure. We'll see.
I like that. More on the culture of Knog because that very much interests me. When you have all these designers, I'm sure they're quite like those guys are pretty they're like the characters themselves, right? I'm sure there's ego involved, this and that. How do you sort of manage that, like all these guys with all their ideas and everything? Because
Yeah.
I can imagine that's a big part of the business.
Look, it has been, and it's really interesting you say, because I think there's lots of egos in every business, but also it's not just the design; it's the marketing and the brand and the ideas and a lot of competing ideas for what works and what is going to be good. I must admit, there's not our company's not that ego led. From a design perspective, I think because it's a very very team based thing, and so the team of people who are developing the ideas for the products tend to bounce off each other and actually feed in a positive way rather than being too ego driven. But there's always a desire to have. I suppose in those early, when you do a concept and you've got a wall full of ideas, and you've done some and someone else has done some others, there's always a bit of competition around which direction we should follow. And so again, we throw it out to a bigger team of people to get feedback, and we're very democratic. So we might end up, voting on different ideas but in the end of the day, everyone who's involved wants all the products to be as successful as possible. And so the outcome often is driven by what people feel will be the most successful product. For many years, being CEO and the sort of senior designer, I led the design styling. I've now stepped back to a large extent because there are other people who are senior in the design department who are really good. And I would say equally or better skilled than I am at today's trends, and so they come and set the trends for where the products are going, which is good. I mean, I have an input, but I rely on maybe employing people as the best people I can find, and hopefully they're better than I am, because that is only going to improve the business.
What do you look for in those people when you try to find them?
I've got to make sure that I'm happy to have a barbecue with them. I'd invite them over.
Okay.
That's a really, really important, like the culture is probably the most important thing. You can teach skills. You can, you have to be able to get on with them. You have to be able to, and so that's why I think maybe ego is not so much of a thing, because that is one of the first decisions we go, do we want to have them in the office? And so that's a big part of it. I think maybe we don't necessarily get people with experience in our area. We try to get people with experience in various different industries. So it might be fashion, or it might be building, or it might be production or whatever. But they bring, or it could be culturally that they come from Europe, or they're from America, or they're from China, or they're from Taiwan, or they're Vietnamese. They all bring culturally a different something to our company, which actually adds value to that. So we have someone who's in Germany who's bringing ideas, and we have a whole lot of people from different countries, which we're very proud of, because that cultural input actually helps. And I think, you can never design a product which you can say will work effectively in every market.
Sure.
But there are some products which are more appropriate to all the markets, and then you'll find that there are some that just don't work. But having this team of people who have got input from different locations is helpful.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Has like the way you approach culture changed throughout the years? Like, oh, we got to do it this way instead of that way, or you have sort of been true to you as a person and build a culture around that?
Look, I think the difference probably is that I'm 40 years older than when I started, so the culture is not driven by me so much anymore. I think it's driven by the younger guys who are up and coming. I am happy to hand over that baton and deal with that. I think it's good to remain young and think young and be involved, and we've got a very flat corporate structure. And it's a small team. It's not, we don't have hundreds of people. So that helps because I think as soon as we've been there before when we sort of got above 35 people, 40 people, and it was hard, the culture changed. And so we also said, let's keep the team and keep the company small because it's much easier to be able to manage and maintain a culture where everyone's happy and everyone.
Makes sense, man. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like building, yeah. I don't know, the whole culture space. It's a fun thing to dive into. It's a whole podcast on its own. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is, and it's those companies. I know people are much happier in a company where the culture works for them. So that's a really important. Like the people who are still working at Knog, a lot of them have worked with us for 15, 18 years. They don't move. So we're doing something right when it comes to the culture. Yeah.
Yeah, it appears that way. That's good. Is there like more state of the market itself? Like, is there like recent developments or like the past couple years with AI and everything that sort of excites you about where design is going?
I love AI. I'm a
Tell me about it.
I'm a really early adopter in AI, and it shits everyone who works for me. It's funny because as soon as Midjourney and a few of those things came about, I started dropping in AI images, not so much designs, but just images into things, and people go, this isn't authentic. It really created a huge debate as to whether this was good or bad or not, or I see it as being inevitable. Okay, there's no question that we are in the midst of something which is happening, which is both exciting and terrifying, because we just don't know where it's going to end up. But I see this as being, because now there's so many different technologies and AI programs, which look, put it this way, I've never been able to write a software program. I've just developed a whole range of software using an AI module on the web in 3 or 4 hours. That it would take someone a month and a half to code, and I don't know how to code. So you sit back and go, that's crazy, like that's it. So and equally there'll be people who try to say they're a designer and can design products by using Midjourney and putting in a prompt. So I see it as a way of being able to open up and explore different ways of creating things and looking at ideas that you may not have considered. I think at the end of the day, we will still use our designers and our humans and our staff to ensure that everything remains authentic and is credible and works. But if we can use and harness AI to make things more efficient, then that makes sense, because I know that if we're doing it, our competitors will be doing it, and so you could sit back and stick your head in the sand and go, well, I don't want to do this because what's the point? I need to find that your business is suffering, and in 2 years' time, you're shutting up shop. So I think there's lots of exciting things that AI can bring to lots of companies. And I sort of think from anything from customer service departments, triaging and helping with that, it means that potentially the people who were doing that full time are now working in something more exciting, like marketing and sponsorship and dealing with other ideas. And so we still have customer service team, but I see that there will be parts of the business which will become more focused with an AI agent or an AI opportunity, and that will free us up to do a lot of other things which are more beneficial. So I see it as a positive.
You have sort of a vision for what the company would look like with like full AI adoption. Like, do you see some like opportunity in that sense?
I can't see it ever being full AI adoption. I mean, we'll use it as a tool, but
Right.
I don't see it as, at this point. I can't see how that would work. Not while I'm still working. Maybe when you get to the point that you're running a few businesses, it may be. But I see it as being a tool at the moment, and
Right.
but it is, you only have to search on some of the reels on social media to see what robots are doing and how this whole process is accelerating so rapidly. I think it's inevitable, basically.
Appears that way. Yeah. No, it's exciting, especially from where I'm sitting. Like, with all these different areas you can go into, right? Like at my age, like what's like a smart move to make? Taking AI into account. Yeah.
I think that probably is more challenging for you than it is for me at 60. I think you've got a situation where there's many of the careers that you guys are going into are going to be challenged. I have 3 kids. One's an engineer, designer, one's an architect, and one's a photographer. All 3 industries are going to be challenged by AI.
Right.
And so how do you set yourself up to make sure that you use it rather than be just find yourself looking for an alternative? I don't know what the answer is, but it's both exciting and terrifying. Like I said, I think that's but it's here. So we better get used to it.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Closing. Do you have sort of things you wanna? I mean, you're 60, right? You're relatively young. Things you want to do sort of in the business and envisions you got in the business before you called it a day.
Oh yeah. Look, plenty. Look, my father ended up working till he was 89.
Okay, right.
89. So I see I've got
you got 30 years left. Okay.
I got 30 years left. I'm only just warming up. So yeah, there's plenty to do. Look, I think to your point, there may well be a high-end cycling accessory brand. There could be another industry that we want to deal with. We have currently a lot of technology in the electronic tracking, and we've got a product called Scout, and that's now we're rolling that out into travel and pet and snow gear and other gear and moto. So there's a whole range of products that we're currently working on under a sub or a new brand, which will be launched in Q1 next year. So yes, I'm only just starting. I'm getting warmed up.
I like that.
Yeah,
that's cool. You see this like you want to sell it one day, or you want to pass it down, or you want to like create like a.
Are you making an offer?
At 22, I don't think I am, but
you look. I think there'll be someone who's interested in Knog at some point, and for certainly that will be at some point. There'll be a reason to move aside and try and cash out of the business. But we've got a lot of people working there, and they're all happy at the moment. Things are pretty good, so I can't see it happening just yet. We'll wait and see.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to the Quinn podcast. If you enjoyed it, you can go to quinnpodcast.com to check out all of the previous episodes. quinnpodcast.com.